Friedrich Merz has become Germany's new chancellor after the parliament had to hold a second vote, as the first one did not achieve an absolute majority. There are only a few hours left for the 133 cardinals who will elect Pope Francis' successor to enter the conclave. And a group of ambassadors from the Caribbean community, CARICOM, met with the General Secretary of the United Nations to assess the serious situation in Haiti. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Friedrich Merz has become Germany's new chancellor after the parliament had to hold a second vote, as the first one did not achieve an absolute majority. Germany's parliament held a second vote over Merz's chancellor bid after he suffered a humiliating defeat earlier on Tuesday, in which he did not secure the entirety of the votes of his own coalition. This time he achieved 325 votes in favor, more than the 316 required. The second vote began at 3:15 p.m. local time and had previously been confirmed by CDU's parliament leader Jens Spahn, who also appealed to the relevance of a moment in which the world's eyes were set in Berlin.
I am now concluding the declaration. Member of Parliament Friedrich Merz has achieved the required majority of at least 316 votes. He has been elected Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany in accordance with Article 63, paragraph 2 of the Basic Law.
Earlier on Tuesday, Friedrich Merz had surprisingly failed to become the country's 10th chancellor, falling short by 6 votes despite having formed a coalition with the Social Democratic Party and the Christian Social Union that was supposed to secure him an absolute majority. Because the vote is secret, there was no definite way to know which members of the coalition did not accompany Merz's bid, making him the first chancellor designate which failed to get confirmed in the first round of voting in post-war history of Germany. And there are only a few hours left for the 133 cardinals who will elect Pope Francis' successor to enter the conclave. Strong security measures are in place throughout the city and especially in the Sistine Chapel. The word conclave comes from the Latin cum clave, which means under lock and key, and that is how the members of the College of Cardinals will be from 4:30 p.m. local time on Wednesday. 133 cardinals from 71 countries will elect the 267th Pope of the Catholic Church that gathers more than 1.36 billion faithfuls. The strict security measures that must now deal with the technological challenges order the deactivation of cell phones starting at 3 p.m. local time, and also signal jammers will be activated in all areas surrounding the Sistine Chapel. In this context, in preparation for the conclave, the clergy and laity have taken the oath of secrecy in Pauline Chapel. As stipulated in the Universi Dominici Gregis, the Apostolic Constitution of the Catholic Church, the Carmelengo and the 3 assistant cardinals have approved the observation of the officials on everything that directly or indirectly concerns voting and the scrutiny for the election of the Supreme Pontiff. The act seals the commitment to total confidentiality surrounding the conclave even long after the process of electing the Pope is over. In other news, the President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, arrived in Moscow this Tuesday to participate in the events commemorating the Russian victory over Nazism in World War II. The Cuban president was received by the Russian authorities after his first stop in the city of St. Petersburg, where he honored the memory of the thousands of heroes and martyrs of the siege of Leningrad. The head of state is leading the delegation that will commemorate the heroic deeds of the Red Army against Nazism during the Great Patriotic War. For this, on May 9th, the Russian Federation will hold a military parade for the victory in which leaders from countries such as China, Brazil, and Venezuela will take part. In this context, during his previous stay in St. Petersburg, the Cuban president visited the technological centers of the Russian city, accompanied by Governor Alexander Beklov. Precisely at the headquarters of pharmaceutical company Vertex, the Caribbean head of state witnessed firsthand the operation of a system of modern technologies used in waste collection, transportation, water supply, and other vital public services. We go now to Venezuela, as President Nicolás Maduro called European elites ungrateful for underestimating the decisive role of the Soviet army and people in liberating Europe during the Second World War. In his program Con Maduro Más on the 80th anniversary of the end of the Great Patriotic War, the president stressed that the Soviet victory over the Nazi machine was the greatest historical achievement known in any war. In this sense, the Venezuelan president underlined that it was the Russian army that discovered the Nazi concentration camps and revealed to the world the crimes of the Holocaust, in which millions of innocent people lost their lives.
Maquinaria de guerra nazi, con toda su capacidad destructiva.
The Nazi war machine, with all its destructive capacity, which had been prepared over the years under the protection of the U.S. capital of European capitalism, getting it ready for the main attack. What happened is that, after Hitler went crazy and wanted to conquer Europe and the whole world, and in the end, he opened so many fronts that the Red Army was able to advance. By the way, we'll precisely commemorate here in Venezuela the 80th anniversary of the greatest triumph of both the Russian people and the Soviet Union peoples. They gave the landslide victory to humanity against Nazi fascism, a victory that not only liberated the Soviet Union territories, but it also liberated Europe, despite the fact that European elites are now so ungrateful, not to say a word to the good Venezuelan. Well, they are ungrateful grounded, and they do not recognize that if it were not for Marshal Chuco and the Red Army, be sure that decades of slavery would have passed by.
Por el Mariscal Chutko y el Ejército Rojo.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Salvadoran police officers have arrested the heads of 5 bus companies for allegedly failing to comply with President Nayib Bukele's transportation decree. The presidential decree, which stipulated free public transportation services from May 5th to the 11th, was ordered to compensate for the closure of the Los Chorros section of the Pan American Highway, which the Ministry of Public Works hasn't been able to solve. In this context, authorities unfolded the detainees. Among them, the chair of the National Transportation Board, Alex Sorto, would be charged with offenses such as breach of duty, refusal of assistance, and extortion.
We recognize that we must provide a service, and we have not stopped providing it. We have shown, colleagues, how the 205 bus route has not stopped providing the service. Since the onset of this whole problem of Los Chorros traffic, we have not stopped providing the service. Bus routes, as 205 and 212 have been working. When authorities announced it yesterday, unfortunately, we were in a race against the clock. Indeed, it took us by surprise, especially when in the morning, we had meetings with governmental officials, and they had not mentioned this level of logistics was going to be carried out for today.
In other news, this Monday, a group of ambassadors from the Caribbean community, CARICOM, met with the Secretary General of the United Nations to assess the serious situation in Haiti. The meeting, which took place at the organization's headquarters in New York, allowed participants to analyze ways to help the Caribbean nation effectively confront the crisis of armed violence and restore the rule of law. In Haiti, several voices are calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Alix Didier due to the exponential increase in violence. In this regard, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres reiterated that he was in close contact with the Security Council on this matter and that he would try to promote measures to help resolve the crisis in Haiti. On Monday, heavy rains caused a significant increase in the flow of the Dajabon River located along the Haitian and Dominican border, prompting alerts for residents of its surrounding areas. In this regard, no significant damage has been reported so far, but the constant rain and strong gusts of wind, which have left several areas without electricity, are keeping the community on alert. In this context, authorities on both sides of the border have set up a permanent monitoring system and are advising people to pay the utmost attention to the changes in the river and to take the necessary precautions, especially in the most vulnerable areas. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow the page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. Gaza authorities have warned that the enclave's hospital are just 48 hours away from total collapse due to the Israeli blockade. The Gaza Ministry of Health has warned that the remaining fuel will only be enough for 2 days, leaving critical units such as the ICU, operating rooms, and neonatology without functioning. According to a statement, the situation has deteriorated rapidly since the weekend when the local Ministry of Health indicated that the available fuel supply would be enough for only 3 days, later updating the figure to 2 days. For more than 2 months, Israel has maintained a tight blockade on the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza, even though the Gazan authorities have denounced that this measure prevents access to the fuel necessary for the hospitals to function. Also in this context, hundreds of Israeli protesters were on a picket line in front of the Knesset in rejection of the governmental plan of action to widen the conflict in Gaza. Local police scattered the picketers who were opposed Monday's announcement by the legislature that authorized colonial occupation forces to go on their offensive against the Gaza Strip. Israeli demonstrators accused the Netanyahu administration of prioritizing war escalation over a deal with Hamas Palestinian movement. They further condemned their prime minister's inaction to bring home the still 59 Israeli hostages. Overall, the Zionist regime has rejected and broken all chances of a hostage for prisoner swap and ceasefire deals. And a soldier was killed in a clash with suspected terrorists after heavy gunfire in northwestern Pakistan on Monday. The Pakistani Army Information Office said that the 40-year-old soldier, whose identity was not disclosed, died after in the clash that occurred in the middle of an anti-terrorist operation in the South Waziristan district. According to the military dispatch, a total of 4 operations were carried out in the northeastern part of the country amid an upsurge in fighting between Pakistani forces and the resistance, leaving a total of 8 suspected terrorists neutralized in addition to the soldier's death. The Sudanese paramilitary Rapid Support Forces continue its drone attacks on Port Sudan for the third consecutive day. The new attack is part of the escalation denounced by the United Nations on Monday and has left the entire city located in the east of the country without electricity. According to local reports, the attack caused fires both in the city's port and airport, which led to the temporary suspension of all flights. The Sudanese government has not yet commented on this attack. In Cuba, the extensive program of the Romerías de Mayo in its 32nd celebration includes around 20 events in multiple squares of the city, among conferences, plastic and scenic art shows, and other activities. This multicultural event takes place in Holguín. Our colleague Jordani Rodriguez tells us all about it.
Since 1994, the cultural event has turned Holguín into the capital of young art in Cuba. Mexico is part of the 80 countries that are present in this 32nd edition of the Romerías de Mayo. The premiere in Cuba of the opera of La Mulata de Córdoba by composer José Pablo Moncayo of the Aztec country is part of the wide range of auctions. The Rodrigo Prat Lyric Theater, the Holguín Symphony Orchestra, as well as choristers and musicians from Mexico, join in this song from solidarity among nations under the orchestral direction of Maestro Isaac Márquez. It is wonderful because both in the lyric theater and in the orchestra there are first-year students and even professionals, and it is an integral experience for everyone. Since the group is heterogeneous, you have to know how to work so that everyone sounds the same and that they are at the same level. Among the most awaited spaces of the Romerías is the 30th edition of the Congress of Thought and Prize for Young Researchers Memoria Nuestra. This is a meeting of deep reflection inspired by the analytical vocation and social commitment of the artists attending the Romerías. It is the first time that I am in Holguín, in Romerías, and the truth is that I have been surprised by the amount of activities they have. We start very early, about 4 in the morning. It is to come prepared, to not sleep, and to see many activities of all kinds, performing arts, visual arts, and a super important part that has caught my attention is the academic part. At Bloguerías de Mayo, an event that brings together communicators, journalists and other actors in the media, there was also a dialogue on ethics, values and principles in contemporary communications in the midst of a world that is trying to globalize. The ethical and legal challenge of the use of artificial intelligence in the media were discussed at the event. We have to go ahead and demonstrate that artificial intelligence is a tool that we can put in value from use of ethics, from the journalistic trade and exercise, not humanizing them but using them as a tool. We must give them the elements for good use and apply them from good practices. Organized by the Saiz Brothers organization, an organization of the artistic and literary vanguards of the country, the Romerías de Mayo are the epicenter of the art between tradition and modernity. We arrived with flutes, with different types of instruments today to donate as part of a project that has been making cultural exchange and donations of about 1,000 musical instruments to Cuba for more than 25 years. This is a beautiful city. The Romerías de Mayo were born for the debate, the confrontation of ideas and the alternative and vital discussion that the island needs. We are talking about an intergenerational dialogue from May 2 to 8 because there is no today without yesterday.
Camarógrafo Eide de la Pera y Jordanis Rodríguez Laurencio, teleSUR, Holguín, Cuba.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For telesur English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.